Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. LaMalfa for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my home state of California, I'll direct this to Mr. Gardner, our high-speed rail project went from a projected ballot item that told the taxpayers it would be a $33 billion project to go from SF to LA and be completed by the year 2020. And a good portion of that, above the $9 billion bond portion that the voters voted on, the rest would be from private investments, attracting private investments. So far, the private investors have stayed away in droves. The $9 billion has been burned up, and the projected cost is, instead of $33 billion, is at least $128 billion. And there hasn't been a mile of actual track laid yet, other than some of the roadbed that has been put down and some of the bridges. They also at the time claimed that there'd be 1 million jobs up until, a couple of years after the ballot measure. Then they finally had to admit 1 million job years, which at the present number they tout of 13,000 workers, the math I did would say if you have 1 million job years divided by 13,000 workers, that'll take 76 years to build the project, which they're right on track for that at this point here. So this will be at least 2030 something before they get one of these segments done. So, Mr. Gardner, how could they be so far off on an initial business plan that they told the voters, the taxpayers, in 2008 to what we have now, where there's nowhere near $128 billion? They might be able to put their hands on $20 billion when they do carbon taxing, and they just filched another $3 billion out of the federal government here recently. So, when they're $100 billion short, where are they going to get that? And how could they be so far off on the plan? They didn't even have the route figured out before they put this in front of the voters.
Well, Congressman, certainly Amtrak's, as you know, not been involved in the high-speed project directly or its original development.
Comments.
We are supportive of advancing high speed, and similar to Congressman Moulton's point, we think there is a real role for high speed in various markets in the United States, and California certainly has incredible markets and huge demand and real challenges in terms of mobility. But I think the main issue, and something we've learned, and an issue that's also faced Amtrak, is that quite often, because there hasn't been the apparatus to fund or develop early planning phases for good ideas, when folks are trying to sort of develop concepts for these systems, which I think could create a lot of value, they're doing so before we've gone through the standard preliminary engineering, design, NEPA processes that really do set the envelope of cost and schedule.
What did you just say for the last 40 seconds there? What did you just actually say right then?
So that one of the challenges when doing big projects is the amount of planning and the time for planning to get the project developed. And so what happened in California is really, I think the California high-speed team could explain the process, but I would say that for any project to really, a big project to be something that folks can understand in terms of estimating cost and time, you've got to go through this environmental process, and the environmental process and the planning process are really what set out the possible envelopes. So you asked me what happened from their initial estimates to now.
If you have an idea,
it's that process.
How a plan could be that far off, and we have bigger plans going forward. Let me talk about a more local one. Dunsmuir, California, up in my district, has used to have a twice-a-day connection there. During the pandemic, as they call it, was all halted. So now there's only one a day. You have to catch it around somewhere between 1 a.m. or 4 a.m. depending. So the local economy, and this is just one typical rural town, that rural areas are some of the least utilized service routes, and they have much more interruptions. So with Amtrak setting forward to do very optimistic work, how are we going to see that the rural areas are going to have any share of this that's going to be significant instead of being the tail end of the whole system?
Well, Congressman, we've got our Coast Starlight service is serving Dunsmuir and the other several stops in your district, and There is also supplemental bus service that serves some of the stations, Chico, and I think up to Reading as well. That's funded by the state of California in partnership with Amtrak, the connecting bus service. So I think maybe the change in service is the bus service levels, but we believe, as you heard from our chairman, in investing in this national network. Right now, the big changes that are happening are new fleet coming to better serve communities like Dunsmuir, and investments across all of the stations so that we have accessible stations and also stations that are
Thank you.
ready
I have to cut you off there due to time, but new fleet isn't going to change the fact that there's no trains running through there, and that we don't have the model be successful out there with passenger rail. It seems the freight has to somehow keep
Thank you.
railroads in business. So with that, I'm way through
Thank you,
time.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.